In this lesson, we'll discuss animating camera cuts and close-ups in Max. Camera cuts are used to bring our motion pictures to life. When we render out from different cameras, all of those images really don't mean anything until we bring them back together to tell a story. So we want to make sure that we have our continuity down. We'll be discussing continuity a little bit later on, but we want to make sure that that's down and also that they're brought together in a way that is entertaining to the audience. Now, close-ups, they are one of the most powerful storytelling tools we have, because with close-ups we can bring the audience right into our scene and eliminate everything that they shouldn't pay attention to. For example, in this shot, what we have is a pen and some paper, and we want the pen to be the point of interest, the significant part in this scene that really needs to be focused on. So what that means is that we really shouldn't have things like this chair at the back, or the stairs, for example, or even this couch in our final shot when it comes to really doing a close-up, so that the audience can pay attention to what is important. Now, there are different types of close-ups we can use. There's the medium shot, that is basically the upper half of the body, the upper body of the character. We have the head and shoulder shot when we're focusing on the dialogue of the character. Then the head shot, which is something that conveys an emotion that is really extreme, like something major has happened to the character and we really want to see the expression on their face. And then there is the extreme close-up that is used for magnifying small objects. Let's say if a scientist was working on a device, we'd want to bring that camera in to focus on that small device and just even the hand working on that device. So those are some examples. Now, if we use this incorrectly, if we do this in the wrong way, these camera cuts and close-ups, of course, it's going to detract the tension. The audience will not understand what's happening. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. And again, we want to make sure that the pen is going to be our main focus and nothing else. So let's go ahead and create a free camera. And again, with angle snap turned on, we'll go ahead and rotate this up 90 degrees in the X, rotate it 180 degrees in the Y. And then we can go ahead and position this so it's focusing on the pen. What I'd even like to do is just go ahead and snap the camera to the pen and then move it back that way, just so we can make sure that the camera initially is planar with this point of interest. So I'll head over to the layer manager under Tools, Manage Layers. We have this environment layer. I'll just go ahead and unfreeze that. So now we should be able to go ahead and freely select the pen. I'll select the camera, press Shift-8 to quick align the camera to the pen. Once that's done, we can go ahead and freeze the environment layer, go ahead and close out the layer manager and bring the camera back. From there, I'll go ahead and create a point helper. And then go ahead and position that right where the pen is at. So we'll go ahead and click right where the pen is. May need to adjust this as well so it's right on top of the pen. And you can quick align if you like, but it's not really necessary here. I'll just go ahead and kind of put this right on top of the pen manually. Okay, so with that done, you can kind of get an idea of what we're doing here. We're creating a really basic camera rig so we can pivot from this point of interest. I'll go to the Modify panel and bring down the size of this so it's not too large. Okay, and then from there we can go ahead and take our camera and link it to that helper. All right, now we'll head over to Views, Viewport Configuration, use the two-pane layout. I'll press Alt-W and make sure that the perspective camera on the left side is actually our shot camera. And then again, we want to make sure Save Frames is turned on. Now focusing on our perspective camera, we'll select that point of interest. And let's go ahead and rotate it up in gimbal mode. Now, when using gimbal here, what we want to do is make sure that we have a good rotation order so that we can very easily rotate this side to side. And right now, the rotation order is set to XYZ. We could see that underneath the motion panel. If we were to head there underneath rotation, by default, it's set to XYZ, and this is going to work for us. So we'll go ahead and leave it the way it is. What I'd like to do now is go ahead and just rotate the camera up. It's a good idea to turn off angle snap now. And then we'll go ahead and rotate this camera over to the side. Okay, now we'll turn on auto key, and let's add some animation where the camera pans over while focusing on this point of interest. So let's say to about 85. We want to work with several frames here so we can have the audience read what's happening in this sequence. So we'll just have the camera just rotate over to our right. So if we were to go ahead and focus in on our shot camera panel and hit play, here's what we end up with. Now, what I don't like is the ease out of the first key and ease into the second key. Let's say if the shot was going to be added to a shot previous to this. If we have this ease out and ease in rather than a continuous path, it may break the illusion somewhat. So I'll go ahead and right click and head over to the curve editor and take the rotation Z keys. With them selected, we can go ahead and set them to linear interpolation. Alright, so now if we were to go ahead and hit play, get something that's a little bit better. Alright, so the next step is to animate our close-up where we eliminate all the non-essentials and focus on what the audience needs to bring their attention to. So here we can go ahead and select the camera, go into the move tool. We'll have this set to local, which will be a lot easier for us to zoom in on this pen. Okay, so from here, I'll go to frame 84, the last frame of the camera's pivot animation, and we'll go ahead and set a key. Checking our key filters, we'll again make sure rotation and position are checked on. Then on 85, this is where we're really going to zoom in. Okay, and what I'd even like to do is head back over to the pivot control, that helper, and go ahead and rotate that up so we have more of a top view of this pen. And something we also don't want to do is break the plane, as they say, where we cause the continuity to break because the angle of the pen kind of flips, and we'll discuss that in an upcoming lesson. All right, so we'll go ahead and bring this back so that the pen will be in shot. I'll go ahead and select the pivot control and adjust that. Go back to the camera and then move it back so our pen is in shot. Okay. Now what it looks like here, we could see that our camera is kind of panning upward, and that's not what we want. We want just a roll to the side. We don't want it moving up at the same time. So we can go ahead and correct that in our curve editor. We'll just go to the rotation X of that pivot control, and we could take this key and bring it to the same value of the key on frame 0, which is 28. So just go into the rotate X. We'll go ahead and select the key. Again, that value is 28. I'm going to copy that, go to the last key, and paste the value in. And that'll correct that problem. Okay, great. On 84 now, with the pivot control selected, I'll go ahead and make sure that we have a key set on position and rotation. And then by the time we get to 85, we can go back and rotate the pivot control up to get the framing we had before. So there we have it. Now lastly, what I'd like to do is add a zoom in to this pen from the camera itself. So we can go to 115, the last frame in the sequence, and zoom into the pen just a little bit more. Just a subtle zoom in. So here's what we get when we hit play. Okay. So that's looking really good. Now what we have at the end of this animation is our camera slowly getting to this key on 84. So to correct that, so that we have, again, a linear path, we need to go back to that rotation Z of the pivot control and just make sure that it is set to linear, which it is currently not. You can see by having it ease into that last key, it kind of broke the illusion we were trying to create. But now with it set to linear, if we were to go ahead and hit play, that's much better. Lastly, to make the motion look continuous, let's have a linear path as we exit the key on 85, and then we could have it slow into the key on 115, so the audience can absorb what's happening. So heading back over to the curve editor, now we want to go back to our camera and focus on its positional tracks. And here again, we want to go ahead and take our initial keys and set them to linear. And then we'll have a slow in to these last keys, which they should already be set to. Now, if you want to slow them in a little bit more, you can go ahead and select the last keys, make sure that lock tangents is turned on. Go ahead and hold down Control and just drag the handle out some more. And here's what we end up with. All right, great. So now the audience can read what is the point of interest in the shot. It's not the couch. It's not even the green tables we see. It's the pen and the paper. The paper's underneath the pen, but mainly it's the pen, and we could see that especially with that camera cut that we had. Now with camera cuts, a lot of times you'll be working with multiple cameras, and you'll need that at times, but you can work with one camera if you need to, as we saw in this lesson. So go ahead and work with your camera cuts and work with your close-ups and make sure that there's continuity there. Again, we will be discussing continuity a little bit more in detail later on in the training, but make sure that when you do your camera cuts that it really brings your story to life and it makes sense, and your close-ups in a way that really show what is significant in your shot. Now the last thing I'd like to mention is locking down a camera so that someone doesn't accidentally shift it and cause your animation to be offset. So if we were to go ahead and head back over to the camera that's selected, we'll head over to the hierarchy panel and go to link info, and here's how we can lock down our transformation parameters. So we can go ahead and lock down the movement and rotation of this camera. We can do the same thing to our interest control. Just lock that down. The motion's still going to be there, but what happens now is that we cannot go in and start to rotate this camera around because it's locked down. So we can't add any keys. So you want to make sure that you do that after you have animated your cameras. Again, so there's no problems in the end.